Hello, welcome. What I want to show here now is I want to adjust the scaling of a map. Why won't we do this? Because sometimes you have a map which you purchased, for instance, from some module and it's not the way you want to have it. For instance, in roll20, if you purchase a module from Wizards of the Coast, the maps are often, as far as I know, always, if you have a 10-foot grid, then they make a 10-foot grid and separate it in half units so that you have these 5-foot tokens. And why do we want to adjust it at all? Maybe because you can see if we, for instance, use here these status icons and use these tiny tokens, then the status icon is nearly as big as the whole token. Imagine you have a map which is 20-foot gridded, and then they make a grid with 20 foot and separate it in 1.25, so in quarter grids, then you can't see anything at all. So this is the reason why we want to change the scaling. And if you have such a predefined map, I just made it up, you might recognize it's a cutout from a larger map from Princess of the Apocalypse, but you can see it's precisely like roll20 would do this. So you have a 10-foot grid, you can see it here, and it's subdivided into four squares. You can see here, for instance, this is what they do. They have a scale of 10 feet, and then they have a size of half units. And that's the problem. So if we now want to have tokens which are as big as they should, so that you can see anything, we have to do basically three things. You have the map layer with the picture behind, which has to be changed. That's the easy one. Then you have, of course, the dynamic lighting layer if you use it as a plus or pro user. You have to change the dynamic lighting layer, and you have to change everything which is on the GM layer in case there is anything. And okay, let's see what to do about it. It's always the same. If you are on the map layer, then you have here only this one map. You have to take care if there are not only the map but other things on the map layer. But in case, usually it's just the map, and this is the easiest one. The first thing you have to do is you change the size. And in this case we have 10 foot and want to enlarge it so we can use 5 foot. So we just have to double the size. It's easy. In this case it's 38 by 28, and then we have to scale it for 5 foot. And of course we have here 1 unit. This is the standard what everybody uses for a battle map. So what you can see here, of course, is everything is twice as large. It's not a square map, you can see, but the easiest thing to do so is you select the map. You can see it here with these tiny handles that it's selected. And the easiest way is you just set dimensions 38 by 20, yes, 38 by 28. Then it's the correct size. Then you have just to adjust it here, and everything is correct. Easy going. What you can see if you look near to it, it looks precisely the same as before, but it's so you have here this 10-foot grid in the map, and you have this 5-foot grid on the grid. It's not precisely aligned, but we can adjust this. The easiest way to adjust things in roll20 very smoothly is you hit the Alt key, the left Alt key, and then move things with the cursor keys. So if I select here now the map, you can't see it that I've selected it, but I did it. Then I can use the Alt key and the arrow keys to very smoothly move it, as you can see. Okay, so And this way it's precisely aligned, everything is fine. And we can see the map is as it should be. But now, of course, everything else is wrong. Second one, what we want to do is the dynamic lighting layer. You can see here now everything is of course also just a quarter of the whole map. So we have to resize it in every dimension by a factor of 2. And unfortunately it is not possible in roll20. I'm here on this layer and I can select everything by hitting Control A, as you may be used to. Then you can see, okay, here with these handles you have already selected everything which is on the dynamic lighting layer here. And now it would be very nice to do the same thing as we did with the map. Just right clicking, set dimensions, twice the size, but this isn't possible for such graphic things. So the problem is we have to do it manually, but it's not such a big problem, because usually everything is more or less aligned to the grid before. You can see it here. It is aligned here for this 5 foot, but it has to be 10, of course. So what you want to do is you just select here this handle. See, the mouse cursor is changing, and then drag it. And I really recommend pressing the Alt key here too, because if you don't do this and let loose, then everything snaps to the grid, which is then wrong. So if you hit the Alt key and change the size, then you are very sure that things are not snapping to the grids, but you are really resizing it as you want. So now I hit Alt key and drag this thing, and I try to see which is the double size. Here maybe you can see it. This looks relatively good, but not precisely. Okay. So maybe we have to adjust the map a little bit more here. Okay. So now everything looks, in my eyes, very good for the dynamic lighting. Maybe a little bit. No, it's too much. And of course you can also adjust it by moving it with the Alt key a little bit, which I'm now doing. And I think it is good enough for me, at least. And the alternative to doing so is to delete everything on the dynamic lighting layer and draw the dynamic lighting by yourself manually again, which is much work. But I think this is okay. And the more it is aligned, these things are, the more they are aligned before to the grid, it's easier to see, because here it wasn't, because the map is drawn very roughly, I would say, not a Mike Schley map. If it is before very good aligned to the grid, then it is easier to draw it, to drag it into a size of double size. But here I think we are good with this one. So, and now what we essentially do is the same for the GM layer. On the GM layer I have here also these things. Usually not so many things are on the GM layers, so maybe you can say, okay, if there are not so much things, just drag them where they have to be. Before you could see where they were before, but essentially it's possible to do the same thing. So I hit Control A to select everything on the GM layer. Then I seek here these handles, and then also hitting Alt key and dragging things into double size. This is too much. You can see it by the size of the circles, because the circles were before 10 foot radius, and you drag them in a way that they are now also 10 foot. So maybe this way, more or less. I would say this way. They are not in the same position, but of course as every time, you can move them with the Alt key and the cursor keys now. Actually, I don't know where they were before, but you can adjust it as you want. Maybe it's not such a big problem. So everything now is here, and then you have these tiny tokens, and even in this case you can do here, not on the object and tokens layer, you can do the same thing. Control A, everything is selected on the token layer, hitting Alt key and dragging them to the double size. And here also you can see, okay, this Amber Hulk was of course 10 feet radius, and it should be now 2. It's a little bit too big, already too big. Well, all you can see here with these Kenku, they are nearly 5 foot. So of course not everything is perfect in this case. You have to adjust things. I think they were more in these positions before. Maybe this way. And everything is fine. Not really, but if you are taking them here, the tokens, they snap to the grid anyway, so it's no problem to adjust this. So what you have now is you have adjusted the whole map. Usually maybe you don't want these big markers here, so you adjust them anyway. I like it a little bit smaller, but it's manual work. You could have done this in any way before. So you see, if you touch things and don't hit the Alt key, everything is snapping to the grid. If you want adjusting this to the grid, it's the easiest way is to let the Alt key go. So then you have it as you want. And the first thing you can see, because you see, okay, nothing has changed. What has changed is the size of these tokens. You can see it here on the health bar. It was very big before because it looked something like that before, remember? And now this is looking like this. And if you now use a status icon, it has a proper size and not covering the whole thing. So, and I did this to the whole Curse of Strahd campaign, which are several maps. If you know this, I guess it's maybe 20 or more maps. And if you get used to it doing it, so you can do it maybe for a big map, like the maps in Curse of Strahd. You can do it for a big map in maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So maybe it's possible to do this for a campaign. If you compare the effort to do so for a big campaign compared to the effort you have to prepare it anyway, because you have to read maybe 200 pages or something like that, and remember things, prepare other things, prepare storylines, and so I think this is not so much effort. If you want to have the maps as battle maps as you want to. Some people are saying, okay, it might be an issue if the map, because every map will be then twice the size as before. It could be a performance problem in your browser, but I think, or at least I didn't encounter any performance problems before. So I hope this helps or helped, and now you can go on and adjust your maps. Goodbye, have a nice day.